Welcome to the Daily History Chronicle. Each day, we travel back to discover a pivotal moment that changed the world. These aren't just dates and facts. They're stories of courage, conflict, innovation, and consequence that still echo through our lives today. Are you ready to explore? Let's see what happened on this day in history.
This is the Daily History Chronicle, where we explore the moments that shaped our world and discover why they still matter today. I'm Richard Backus, publisher of University Teaching Edition, and every day I get to share a piece of history that I think you'll find as fascinating as I do. On January 24, 1961, a B-52 bomber broke apart over a small farming community in North Carolina. As the plane disintegrated in the night sky, two hydrogen bombs, each 250 times more powerful than Hiroshima, tumbled toward the earth. What happened in the hours that followed remains one of the closest calls in the nuclear age, and for decades the full truth was classified. Here's what makes this worth understanding. One of those bombs went through every arming step except the last. 3 of 4 safety mechanisms either failed or triggered during the fall. Only one switch, a simple low-voltage switch, stood between North Carolina and a 3.8 megaton detonation. And here's the critical question. How does a safety system designed to prevent accidental nuclear detonation come within one switch of catastrophic failure? What does that tell us about how we design safeguards for systems that cannot be allowed to fail? Picture this. It's just before midnight on January 23, 1961. 17-year-old Billy Reeves is getting ready for bed at his family's farmhouse near the hamlet of Faro, about 12 miles north of Goldsboro, North Carolina. The January night is unseasonably warm. Then his bedroom walls begin glowing red. Reeves runs to the porch. Above the fields, a B-52 bomber, one wing missing, fiery debris rocketing in all directions, plunges from the sky and slams into a cotton field barely a quarter mile away. Everything around him catches fire. The grass burns, the road melts. His mother falls to her knees praying. She thinks it's the end of times. Within an hour, a military helicopter hovers overhead. An amplified voice repeats one word, evacuate. What Billy Reeves didn't know, what the voice in the helicopter did know, was that somewhere out there in the darkness lay 2 3.8 megaton thermonuclear bombs. Let me build the clock for you. In 1961, at the height of the Cold War, the United States maintained a program called Operation Chrome Dome. Multiple B-52 bombers remained airborne around the clock, 365 days a year, each carrying 2 nuclear weapons. If the Soviets launched a first strike, these bombers would already be in position to retaliate. This created a specific engineering challenge. How do you keep nuclear weapons in the air continuously without accidentally detonating them? The answer was multiple redundant safety mechanisms. Every bomb had several independent systems that all had to fail before detonation became possible. The Mark 39 hydrogen bomb that flew over North Carolina that night had been designed with this redundancy in mind. But what the designers couldn't fully account for was what happens to those safety systems when the bomber carrying them disintegrates at high altitude. That night, Captain Walter Tulloch and his 8-man crew were returning from a routine training loop when the refueling tanker's crew noticed something alarming. Fuel was streaming from the B-52's right wing. Over 37,000 pounds of jet fuel, more than 5,400 gallons, vanished in under 3 minutes. At about 5,000 feet on final approach, the plane began veering right. Then it started rolling over. The right wing tore off. Tulloch hit the bailout alarm, As the B-52 disintegrated, centrifugal forces pulled on a lanyard in the bomb bay, exactly as a crew member would if releasing weapons over enemy territory. Both Mark 39 hydrogen bombs separated from the aircraft. One bomb's parachute deployed. It drifted gently down and came to rest hanging from a tree, its nose barely touching the ground. The other bomb's parachute failed. It hit the earth at 700 miles per hour, plunging 18 feet into the waterlogged soil. Lieutenant Jack Revell was an explosive ordnance disposal officer. He got the call in the middle of the night and flew to North Carolina with his team. When they examined the bomb hanging from the tree, they found something that would remain classified for decades. 3 of 4 safety devices had either failed or triggered during the fall. Only one remained: the safe arm switch. In 1983, Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara told reporters the bomb's arming mechanism had 6 or 7 steps to go through to detonate, and it went through all but one. The second bomb had buried itself deep in the swampy farmland. Revell and his team spent 8 days digging. The excavation grew larger than a football field. They were searching for 92 detonators, the nuclear core, and the arm safe switch. Until my death, I will never forget hearing my sergeant say, "Lieutenant, we found the arm safe switch," Revell said. And I said, "Great." He said, "Not great, it's on arm." The impact had thrown the switch to the armed position. Now let's examine what this reveals about safety system design, because the engineering principles at work here apply far beyond nuclear weapons. Lesson 1. Redundant safeguards assume independence. The Mark 39 had multiple safety mechanisms precisely because engineers understood that any single mechanism could fail. But the design assumption was that these failures would be independent, that one mechanism failing wouldn't make another more likely to fail. When the B-52 broke apart, that assumption collapsed. The same forces that tore the plane into pieces acted on all the safety mechanisms simultaneously. The violent tumbling that deployed the parachute also triggered arming sequences. The mechanical shock that separated the bomb from the aircraft also moved switches and released lanyards. This is a fundamental challenge in safety engineering. Redundant systems protect against random individual failures, but they're much less effective against systematic failures, events that compromise multiple systems at once. An airplane disintegrating is exactly that kind of systematic failure. We see this pattern repeatedly in catastrophic accidents. The Challenger space shuttle disaster wasn't caused by a single O-ring failure. It was caused by a combination of cold weather, organizational pressure, and communication breakdowns that all happened simultaneously. The Fukushima nuclear disaster wasn't just a tsunami. It was earthquake damage, plus flooding, plus backup power failure, plus cooling systems failure, all cascading together. The question isn't whether you have multiple safeguards. The question is, can your safeguards survive the same conditions that create the danger they're supposed to prevent? Lesson 2. Safety margins need to account for your own uncertainty. A 1969 classified report by Sandia National Laboratories engineer Parker F. Jones concluded that one simple dynamo technology low-voltage switch stood between the United States and a major catastrophe. He recommended that Mark 39 bombs no longer be used in an airborne role. Think about what this means. 6 years after the accident, engineers concluded that the safety margin was inadequate. Not that the design was completely flawed, the switch did work as intended. But relying on a single switch as the last line of defense against a 3.8 megaton detonation represented insufficient margin for error. This gets at something subtle but crucial. Safety isn't just about preventing failures, you understand. It's about maintaining margins large enough to protect against failures you haven't imagined yet. When Boeing engineers designed the Mark 39 safety systems, they probably ran calculations about impact forces, tumbling dynamics, and electrical failure modes. But could they really model every possible way a bomber might disintegrate? Every sequence of mechanical shocks that might affect the switches? Every combination of circumstances that might defeat multiple safeguards at once? The honest answer is probably not, which means the safety margin needs to be wide enough to cover unknowns. One switch as the last defense is a margin too thin. Lesson 3: transparency about near misses prevents future disasters. The Goldsboro accident was classified for decades. The full details weren't publicly known until documents were declassified in 2013, more than 50 years after the event. Even the simplified story that emerged over the years significantly understated how close the bomb came to detonating. This secrecy served national security interests. Revealing exactly how nuclear safety systems worked would provide useful information to adversaries. But it also prevented broader examination of what had gone wrong and whether similar vulnerabilities existed in other weapon systems. The challenge is real. How do you learn from near catastrophes without revealing information that makes actual catastrophes more likely? But what we know about safety culture suggests that organizations that hide their failures tend to repeat them. Organizations that study near misses systematically tend to prevent future disasters. Modern aviation is remarkably safe, partly because of robust incident reporting systems. Pilots report near misses, mechanical anomalies, and close calls, and those reports are analyzed to identify patterns before they cause crashes. The system works because it prioritizes learning over blame. Nuclear weapons programs, by their nature, can't operate with that level of transparency. But the Goldsboro accident suggests that the classification system may have been too aggressive, that there were lessons to be learned that didn't require revealing specific weapons design details. Lesson 4: acceptable risk changes when stakes change. The Goldsboro accident led directly to improved safety mechanisms on American nuclear weapons. It contributed to President Kennedy's decision to scale back the Airborne Alert Program. The bombs eventually came down from continuous patrol. Why? Because once you've had a multi-megaton weapon go through all its arming steps, except one while falling over North Carolina, the risk calculus changes. The operational benefits of keeping bombers airborne continuously didn't disappear, but they no longer outweighed the risk of another accident. This is how societies adjust to near catastrophes. They recalibrate what counts as acceptable risk. Before Goldsboro, the risk of a bomber accident was seen as worth taking, given the strategic benefits of continuous airborne alert. After Goldsboro, that risk assessment shifted. We see this pattern after most major accidents. 3 Mile Island changed how we think about nuclear power plant safety. Bhopal changed how we regulate chemical plants. Deepwater Horizon changed offshore drilling practices. Each disaster revealed that risks previously considered acceptable were actually larger than understood. The question is whether we can make those recalibrations before the catastrophe rather than after. Can we study near misses seriously enough to change our risk tolerance before someone dies? Here's what troubles me about the Goldsboro story. We survived it by luck. Not by good design, the design failed. Not by robust safety margins, the margins proved too thin. By luck. One switch held when 3 others had failed or triggered, And for 50 years, almost no one knew how lucky we'd been. Billy Reeves knew a plane had crashed in his field. He didn't know that 2 hydrogen bombs had fallen there. The people of eastern North Carolina didn't know they'd been that close to permanent evacuation. The American public didn't know that the nuclear safety systems they trusted had come within one switch of catastrophic failure. That level of secrecy prevented public examination of whether other systems had similar vulnerabilities. It prevented democratic oversight of the risks being taken in the public's name. And it meant that the lessons learned were confined to the nuclear weapons complex rather than being available to other industries working with high-consequence technologies. We're still living with these tensions. Every high-stakes technology faces the same challenges. How do you design safety systems that remain effective under catastrophic conditions? How do you maintain adequate safety margins when you can't perfectly predict all failure modes? How do you balance operational secrecy against the benefits of transparent safety culture? And how do you learn from near misses before they become actual disasters? The Goldsboro accident wasn't the only broken arrow incident, the military term for accidents involving nuclear weapons. There have been more than 60 documented cases: weapons lost at sea, fires on aircraft carriers, crashed bombers in Spain and Greenland, a bomb dropped on Mars Bluff, South Carolina, when a crew member accidentally grabbed the emergency release handle. Most of these accidents didn't result in nuclear detonation, which speaks to the overall effectiveness of safety systems. But Goldsboro shows how thin the margin can be, how a sequence of events that no one fully predicted can defeat multiple independent safeguards and leave catastrophe hanging on a single switch. That component is still there, 180 feet beneath a cotton field in Faro, North Carolina. The federal government purchased the land and established an easement. The field is still farmed. Workers just cannot dig more than 5 feet down. The plutonium has a half-life of 24,000 years. I'm Richard Backus, and this is the Daily History Chronicle. Tomorrow, we'll explore another moment that shaped our world. Until then, consider this. When you hear that a system has multiple redundant safeguards, what assumptions are built into that statement? Do those safeguards remain independent under catastrophic conditions? Or can a single event compromise multiple safeguards simultaneously? When the stakes are genuinely catastrophic, nuclear weapons, chemical plants, financial systems, is it acceptable to rely on safeguards that leave no margin for scenarios we haven't imagined? And when near catastrophes occur, how much transparency is necessary to learn the right lessons? Because that's what the night of January 24th, 1961 teaches us, not just about nuclear weapons safety, but about how we design and operate any system that cannot be allowed to fail. We survive because one switch held. The question is whether we're designing our safety systems to handle the next time luck isn't enough. Thank you for spending these few minutes with me today. I'm grateful you chose to be here. If you find value in the Daily History Chronicle, I hope you'll subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, a review helps others discover the show. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment and let me know what resonates with you. And if you know someone who loves history, please tell them about us. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow for more of our shared history.